What's your 30,000-foot view of the Mountain West in general this year?
The Mountain West has been really good from a bracketology standpoint and from just the sheer watching the league this year. It's a really good league. I mean, they're looking at, San Diego State's obviously been as successful as it has been over the past few years and continues to do that this year. Utah State's been good. New Mexico, Colorado State, Boise State, Nevada's had nights where it looks good. UNLV is always a threat. The league's really good this season, and it's a really exciting one that's going to get more bids than some of those traditional power conferences.
For you, who right now has the best resume in the Mountain West Conference?
I think it's still Boise State. I think it's still San Diego State for now. That could change as early as Saturday night. Utah State's pretty close and knocking on the door there. But for right now, I think it's still San Diego State, followed by Utah State, as those top two, with New Mexico and Boise kind of being next to each other around the 7-8 kind of seed lines.
How has the Mountain West done this? Lukas Harkins is with us. He's a bracketologist. But I look at, some of these projections, you see the ACC potentially with fewer teams than the Mountain West, or the Pac-12 potentially with fewer teams. And obviously the Mountain West isn't a quote-unquote power league. They've had 4 teams in the NCAA tournament each of the last 2 years. Of course, San Diego State was the team to make the run last year to a national championship game. So what is it about the Mountain West from a scheduling perspective, or how have they gotten to this point, in your opinion?
Well, I think there's part of it is that scheduling factor. You just look at San Diego State itself. This season's 15th in the country in non-conference strength schedule. The league tests itself well outside of conference play and has proven it with some big performances. Colorado State picked up its win over Creighton in the non-conference. There are just examples of this conference picking up wins, and not just this season. They've picked up wins over the past few seasons, as you mentioned. Knock on the door with getting 4 bids several times in a row here, where they've built up enough of a reputation there. Puts them in a great spot to kind of, you don't have to build up momentum as the year goes on and try to convince people that the Mountain West deserves to be in the NCAA tournament field. They've proven it, and San Diego State's run the national championship game certainly plays a factor in that too.
So you mentioned the fact that there's 5 teams with legitimate NCAA tournament resumes right now. I think you could probably argue the merits of Nevada. Certainly they have some opportunities, you would think, in the second half of conference play, maybe to garner some attention. Is 5 realistic, or is it inevitable that because you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 capable teams that someone is going to fall off? Or how do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I think 5 is probably the number. And I think that's because of Boise State going on the road and winning in the pit over New Mexico. That's a huge one to put them kind of in a safer position. You look at the teams in the league this year. New Mexico obviously has outstanding metrics. They're the best of the group in several areas. Utah State only has 2 losses. San Diego State's got its benefits. Colorado State 6-4 against the upper 2 quadrants. Boise State 7-5. They have the quantity of quality to get there. And for all of them, all 5 of those teams have resume metrics within the top 35. That's KPI and strength of record. Those are going to continue to be high because they play good teams. Like Air Force and Fresno State, those groups are at the bottom still. But half the league is really, really talented, and those are going to be high-quality games that either qualify as big wins for those teams or just ones that aren't going to affect those metrics very much.
Lukas Harkins with us right now. Heat check college basketball field of 68 bracketologists. We're about 6 weeks out right now from Selection Sunday. What's I guess let me ask you this. Would you, if you're the Mountain West, and again, the money gets in the way of this a little bit, but would you prefer to have the extra team, but all the teams seated in that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 range? Or would you prefer to have one fewer team, but a team emerge and maybe capture I don't know what's realistic. You tell me. Is a 4 seed realistic for someone if someone just races off with this thing over the final month?
Yeah, I think that's possible, but really only, I think, for Utah State and San Diego State right now. And that can obviously depend on the games they play against each other, as they both have those remaining. I think those are the 2 that could potentially play their way up to a 4 line. But I really think it's more about the quantity, because I think that all these teams, or at least a few of these teams, are going to be in positions they're going to be favored on day 1 of their NCAA tournament. And that's really where it comes down to the Mountain West. Anyone can make a run as a 3 seed, as a 6 seed. I don't think that really matters all that much. It's about the matchups they get in those situations. And I think they put themselves into being in a position to have pretty good seeding. And from there, it's as good as San Diego State's run was, it would be a benefit for the whole conference to get a lot of teams winning games. And there's always a benefit to being like, oh, so-and-so conference had 3 teams in the Sweet 16.
Let's talk about the West in general. You've got Gonzaga. I hear, quote unquote, down year. I mean, metrically, it's not really down, maybe by their standards, but they're like a top 3 to 5 metric team, maybe over the last decade. You see St. Mary's, which has really emerged. I mean, San Diego State earlier this year on a neutral floor. I was there in Vegas. I think the Aztecs won by 25 or 26 points, but they've really played much better basketball. What is the resume like for the Gonzagas and the St. Mary's if they don't win the WCC?
Yeah, I think St. Mary's is in a little better spot there. 3 of their wins are in quad 1, and they still have those great quality metrics, meaning KenPom and BPI. Gonzaga has those great metrics, as you alluded to. They're 19th in KenPom, they're 19th in BPI. They don't have a quad 1 win. I think the road for Gonzaga is going to be harder than people think to get into the field. Like, there's great metrics there for efficiency standpoint, but the resume doesn't really stack up. They've won 15 games this year. 10 of them are in quad 4. I think it's going to be a tougher road. I do think that the St. Mary's team is probably going to make the tournament as they continue to play at the level they have over the past month and a half. They've been outstanding, and I think that's going to continue to play well. And maybe St. Mary's making this run opens up an opportunity for Gonzaga to pick up those kind of wins over a St. Mary's. And I believe they get Kentucky also still on the schedule in a remaining non-conference game. So the opportunities are there for Gonzaga, but right now it's going to be challenging, or at least more challenging than it has been for Gonzaga in quite some time.
Lukas Harkins with us right now. Heat check college basketball field of 68, talking some bracketology about 6 weeks out from Selection Sunday. What about the Pac-12? Are there any, I mean, lock's a strong word because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, Arizona obviously is going to be in the NCAA tournament. Beyond Arizona, what does it look like for the Pac-12 right now?
Yeah, I think Utah is in pretty good position. Utah 6 and 7 across the upper 2 quadrants. They have 3 quad 1 wins. 2 of those are against some of the best of the best. I think Utah's in good shape. And then it's Colorado, Washington State, Oregon are all kind of in the mix, but none of them feel safe right now. I have Washington State on the right side of the cut line and Colorado barely. Oregon just on its way out, just on the outside right now. But those 3 teams, maybe. I think it'd be a surprise if all 3 got in. And I don't really see that Washington USC group really being able to contend. So I think it's a maximum of 5, but that would be pretty lucky, I think, at this point.
A couple of more for you here, Lucas, before you go. The Arizona story is a little bit of a unique one. They got off to an amazing start. They beat Duke at Cameron, but they have some perplexing losses. I know it's hard to win on the road, and they're in league, and it seems like every time they're on the road, they've been losing. They've got a neutral floor loss to FAU. I mean, they've got a tournament resume. That's not in question, but do they have a 1 seed resume if things go perfectly from here on out, or what's their ceiling? Is it a 2 seed?
Yeah, I think they're pretty solidly a 2 for me right now, but I do think there is a push there for a 1 seed, in part because of the wins they have. When you compare it to teams that they'll be fighting with at the top, obviously they have the road win at Duke, and if Duke plays well, Duke can play its way up to a 2 or a 3 seed. That then becomes an unbelievably good road win for Arizona. They dominated Wisconsin at home by 25, a Wisconsin team that now is looking at a 2 seed, and if they win at Nebraska tonight, could be even in contention for a 1 seed themselves. And if you're going to talk about Wisconsin as a 1 seed, it's hard to do that without mentioning Arizona with a 25-point win at home in that. Alabama's played really well lately. They're a metric darling, and they're rising up toward the 3 seed line too. That's another win for Arizona. I think that they have some of those really, really great wins. They're going to hold off some of those other teams. So I think they are still in the mix for 1 seed. But there is something to be said for the fact that they aren't going to pick up any more elite wins the rest of the year because their schedule does not afford it. Their best win possible the rest of the year is a Colorado road win, which is a fringe tournament team.
All right, before you go, so if the season ends today, San Diego State is what seed for you?
A 5.
Okay, so if the season ends today, San Diego State would be a 5 seed. Of course, they were a 5 seed a year ago when they went to the national championship game. Okay, now this is actually the final question. FAU, there's always a lot of discussion in San Diego since last year's Final Four about, hey, why is FAU getting all this consideration and national attention when San Diego State beat FAU last year in the NCAA tournament? It feels like the Aztecs are always under the radar a little bit, always just having success under Brian Dutcher and Steve Fisher. And FAU, it feels like, is still a bit of a darling, but they've got some really curious losses on their resume. How does FAU's resume compare to San Diego State's?
So for one, I have Florida Atlantic just a bit behind San Diego State right now. I have FAU sitting on a 6 line, in part because of those questionable losses. But in terms of seeing them as a darling relative to San Diego State, you kind of hit on it when you use the word always.
Yeah.
Like San Diego State's always been good. It's not a surprise to see San Diego State in the 5 seed range. It's just not. It's been such a successfully good program, consistently successful program over the last few years, that having it as high as a 5 seed and getting consideration in the top 25 and getting that kind of national attention has really become the norm. So I think that's what differentiates it from Florida Atlantic, who probably should have earned that kind of hype last year as they ran through their schedule throughout the year and probably were underseeded at that 8-9 spot. So I think that some of that's a little bit of a delayed reaction to FAU being really good last year, and they are still quite good this year with that Arizona win that you mentioned. So I think that that's what comes back to it for FAU is they're just kind of they're a new face, and everyone's happy and thrilled for new faces coming into the mix. Whereas when you look at the rest of the teams in the 1 through 7 seed range, it's some pretty familiar faces.
Lukas Harkins, again, at Hardwired Sports on Twitter. If you're an Aztec fan, if you're a college hoops fan, this is a great follow. At Hardwired Sports, Lukas Harkins, you can find him on social media. Again, he checked college basketball, field of 68. Lukas, really enjoyed it. Thanks for taking time for San Diegans today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right. Jim, how was your coffee?
Did you like that? Are you good now?
Here's what I like. Here's what I like about when I interview bracketologists. I like how you don't say anything.
Because I would just mess things up.
You have nothing. You have nothing to add. I mean, I hate to say that, but it would be like if we were doing like a conversation about Brock Purdy's footwork. I don't care, but you do. So if we had a Brock Purdy footwork expert on, I feel like you could talk to.
Man, I'm so proud of myself today for putting the bracketology guest list.
That was your idea
in your brain.
Yes, it was definitely.
I knew it. I knew it was going to happen. You'd go, ooh!
I got excited.
We get a couple of bracketologists on and put my feet back and put my feet up
relax.
And relax for the next 15 minutes or so.
I'm waiting for the day I come in and the rundown is all bracketologists.
Maybe the Friday before Selection Sunday, depending on the circumstances.
Potentially.
We'll see.